welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Gabriel Iglesias. Every time I'm going to have a conversation with somebody I know personally and intimately, I have to think about how I would introduce that person to my audience.
I think you just did it.
Yeah, but
That's
I think
pretty good.
I think there's two things that I honed in on that I'd love to talk about in this conversation, particularly. Obviously, the comedy and the life and the stories we share, and just you know how much of an amazing person you are. But there's two big things that I haven't heard many people speak to you about. One is mentorship, and the other one is business acumen, and I mean raw business acumen. But maybe I'll give a bit of backstory, and you're gonna have to fill in some of the backstory, by the
clearly.
way, for how we met.
First of all, you know I have a high school education, so what the hell is acumen? Acumen.
This
Hey,
guy.
acumen. Acumen. Hey, ven pa acá, güey. It almost sounds like Spanish. I have an idea of what it means.
¿Cómo se dice acumen?
Yeah, acumen.
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 You have a knack. Come on, man. How did we meet? 'Cause I actually don't know the full story of this. How did we meet?
Well, I was in Bakersfield doing a show. I remember vividly. I was in Bakersfield doing a show.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, I was in my hotel room and I'm flipping through the channels, and I came across the Tonight Show.
Okay.
And I saw Jay, and Jay was introducing me. Very funny comedian from South Africa, and
That's a good
and you
Jay.
came
I
out
like
there. You came out there, and I was like, who is this person? They are freaking amazing. You were so talented. Your charisma, your energy, the way that you presented yourself. I'm like, this dude is hysterical.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I'm like, clearly, he is way too comfortable, way too confident, way too smiley. I'm like, no, this dude is he's
too
already
smiley.
way too smiley. Yeah. It caught my attention right away how the level that you were already at. And so I went online to see where you were going to be performing, and I saw that you were going to be at the Improv in Irvine. And I'm like, oh my God, I was... I lived by there. And so I said, I'm going to go check them out. And so then I went out there to go see your show. And I'm in line with all these South Africans and all these girls, these white girls with South Africa flags. And they're like, we're here for Trevor. And I'm like, this dude already has a following. Of course he's famous. I knew it. This guy wasn't just some nobody. He showed up there and he already had a following. And so I saw your show, the full hour, not 5 minutes. And so afterwards, that's when I walked up to you and you had your little South African posse right there in the corner of comics and stuff. And I just walked up and you recognized me and you're like, oh my God, hey. And I'm like, hey. And I said,
so I'll tell the story from this point.
Okay.
So from my perspective, this is how it happened. By the way, your whole story is the exact same story as many of my stalkers, by the way, which I love. It's amazing how the intention
we saw you on
changes.
television,
Yes.
and then we waited.
I saw you
outside.
on, and I was like, he smiles so much. And then I researched you online, and I was like, this is where he will be. And I came there, and I waited.
Oh my God, I did sound like a stalker.
I waited for you after the show, Trevor. And there you were. So from my perspective, first of all, I didn't know you were there. I was on stage. I do the show as normal. This is Irvine, California. It's one of the few places where I was able to get people to buy enough tickets to fill out a club, right? Nobody knew me in America. Nobody. And so I do the show, and at the end they go, hey, there's a comedian here, Gabriel Iglesias. He wants to chat to you. I'm like, Gabriel Iglesias? I'm like, isn't that the singer?
Ah.
And they're like, no, that's Julio Iglesias. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, wait, Gabriel. I'm like, who's Gabriel? Because I'm terrible with names. And as soon as I see you, I'm like, oh, shit, the guy that... And you must remember, for me, it's so weird because I come from South Africa. We don't bump into people who you've seen on TV, who you've seen on like any competition shows or any big shows or any... I knew you. I was like, this is the guy. So I come over to you. And it's funny, I was with my South African posse because you were with it seemed like it was sort of like a little Mexican mafia vibe.
Nice.
Because you give off like Godfather vibes. I don't know if you've ever noticed this about you. You have like but it's like you have like a kind vibe.
Nobody gets whacked.
No. Nobody gets whacked. But it's because there's an understanding. You know what I mean? It's an understanding. It's like, yo, you don't want to get fluffy angry. You've got like this, and everyone around you has like a really peaceful but protective demeanor, And so you waited for me afterwards, and it's just a small little crew, and you're like, hey, how you doing, man? And I remember how kind you were, and I was just like, oh, this is great. I can't believe, I think every comic has this. Every comedian is deeply grateful and feels seen when another comedian watches their full set. I remember I was shocked. It's like, why are you here? And you're like, I came to the show. You didn't like ask me for tickets. I didn't know you. And then you said the sweetest thing a human being has ever said to me. You said, hey man, I know that you're a big deal where you're from, but I wanted to offer you an opportunity. I want you to come on the road with me. And you said, please don't be offended. I'm not saying you should be my opening act. I'm not saying any of that. I know you're big in South Africa, but I really think it would be good for you to come out on the road with me because I could expose you to audiences who you would have otherwise never gotten to and who I think will love you. You're like, I think a lot of people in my audience would love you. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, who is this person? Do you know what I mean? Who is this Hispanic Santa Claus? I said yes to you. I didn't know what I was getting into. I came on the road with you and I was like, I've never seen that many but when I say fans, I don't mean people who have come to the show. I don't mean people who are watching you. I mean fans. And that's maybe, my first question about like your business acumen. What do you think you did right to build an environment where you don't just have people who like your comedy. You have people who buy your face, on those little dolls that have the bobblehead things, and you have people who buy like plushies of you, and you have people who buy your t-shirts. But I want to know if you intended that from the beginning, and then also how did you even begin that journey with people? Because there was some point when nobody knew your comedy, and now when you're filling out like a Dodger Stadium, what happened in between? Where did this begin?
I think it was, to say that I had a plan to design this almost sounds like maniacal and evil, like it was my plan all along. No, it was one of those things where I was just grateful that people would come to the shows.
Yeah.
And I would always thank them, and I would always say, hey, if you like the show, tell somebody about it, and that's the word of mouth is the best thing. You guys, if you enjoy what I'm doing, please share, please talk about it. And then after the shows, I would just go outside, and if anybody wants to come by and say hi, I made it so that people knew that I was somebody they could come up to.
Yeah.
I wasn't putting this divide in between where it's like, no, my show's over. Now you go home, I take a check, and I go buy a car.
Yeah.
By not making people ever feel like I was above them or better than them, it's just I'm this lucky kid from the same area that they're driving from. I'm like, hey, I'll see you guys on the 405. I'm that guy where I'm like, hey, if you see me in line at Jack in the Box and you like my show, let me cut. And they're like, okay, go ahead, So I'm somebody you can run into by the bathrooms. And I get people always asking, can I hug you? Or can I feed you? And I'm like, yeah, this is not the norm. So to say it was a plan, it was not a plan. It was just me welcoming the audience and trying to be cool with everybody. And it wasn't until years later where it just got so out of control where you had to start putting things in place so that you didn't find yourself, because I came really close to getting kidnapped a couple times. I know, save the jokes. But yeah, people were just trying to...
You see, I didn't have a joke.
I know there's something in there.
Save the jokes.
And people are like, really? Kidnap? Yeah.
Come on.
But it wasn't a plan. It was just, let me just treat my audience the way I feel like I would want to be treated. Like when I go to a concert, I look to see how the artist welcomes their audience. There's some like singers that will just start singing.
Yeah.
And they won't even say...
1, 2, 3, go!
Yeah. There's no, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. We're going to have a fun time.
Yeah.
It's great. I got so-and-so working on sax. I got so-and-so on drums. We were talking about being here tonight. Little things like that go so far. And people don't want to break that wall. They're afraid of engaging for some reason. And I think that's a mistake. I think a lot of artists would go so much further by bringing audiences in. All it takes is looking at someone, smiling, even if they're smiling too much. I do it too. Smiley recognize smiley.
But you know what I think it is
lot.
actually. I think it's what you just said. It's a fear, and not necessarily a bad fear. I don't take for granted that there are two types of performers. I think there are performers who are trying to get into themselves, and there are performers who are trying to get out of themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I've seen this with comedians as well. So there are some performers who get on stage, and in order for them to hit the marks that they need to hit on that stage, they can't be themselves. They can't be Gabriel. They can't be Trevor. And they don't want to be that person. So they've got to transform into this other being. Like I'm sure you've met tons of comedians who can't go on stage sober.
Have to get in the zone.
Yeah.
I need to get in my space.
Yeah,
I gotta.
but I think it's a protection thing where they go, if you don't laugh at this joke that Gabriel has told, then Gabriel has failed. But if it's like El Matador who told the joke and then the joke doesn't land, well, what would El Matador do? Do you know what I mean? It's like it's just this.
It's the protection.
Yeah, it is. It is completely. And you have a vulnerability to you that really is unique, honestly. Like, where do you think you got that from? Like, what were your first experiences in life that allowed you to like open yourself up in that way?
I think the fact that I've always wanted acceptance and I've been used to not being accepted, it's just been one of those, like, I was very much the kid that didn't have very many friends. I was always overweight. I had really bad teeth. I had acne. And for somebody who was not accepted, I was never picked in sports. I was always, anytime people would get together for groups, I wouldn't even get picked for groups. So it's like, really? I can't even, this has nothing to do with being physical. And I can't even get picked for the science team or get picked for this or that. So it's like, I did not fit the entertainer's mold. But I was drawn to comedy. I loved watching Eddie Murphy. I loved watching Saturday Night Live. I loved hearing the laughter because to me, the laughter was acceptance.
Yeah. The one thing I've realized as I've become an adult is I was like awkward because I was always just observing people. And I don't know, like you seem very affable now. You are very affable now. Were you like that as a kid as well?
I feel like I was very much the same as now. Where you've seen me off stage. It's like I am not the loudest person in the room.
No, you're not.
Nor am I trying to be the loudest person in the room. So as a kid, I think that I just didn't get the opportunity to connect with people.
Okay,
and
that makes sense.
I'm not someone who goes out of their way to try to insert themselves. I would rather just see that there's an organic opportunity to join a conversation or to get to talk to people. But I'm not trying to go out of my way. So if that was awkward, maybe, because I was quiet.
Yeah.
I wasn't outspoken. But as far as socially, like when someone starts talking to me, it's like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? And so I still have a couple of friends from my childhood that remember me from back then, and I value and I cherish them just because it's like, man, that's my only like grounding to before all this happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so anytime I have a question about, hey man, am I acting a certain way? Or am I doing something different? Or is my view on this messed up? Because they'll be real with me and they're not afraid to tell me exactly what they see.
Huh.
And I think it's important too to have a connection to the past like that.
Okay, but then what do you want to lose of the past? I think it's important for
Poverty,
us
man. Sharing a bathroom, man. Fuck that.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? There are some things we hold from the past that are, like I'm always careful. People will say, you're just the way you've always been, or you've changed. And I always go, what is the way I've always been that you're holding on to? Or what is the change that you wish I had maintained? Some things are good to hold on to, and some things are good to change. Are there things that you don't do that you used to do when you were younger that you're glad you let go of?
I don't think that I've changed too much. Things from the past that I definitely would want to let go is the small thinking, the small like, oh, it's the the thing is only this big versus thinking globally.
Right.
So I was very much only thinking this much back then, and I didn't have the ability to see outside of that when I was younger, whereas now it's like it's endless. You can make it as big as you want or keep it as small as you want. But the problem is the bigger something gets, the more difficult it is to manage. And having control over yourself and your career and your surroundings, it is really hard when the circle gets really big.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, that circle did get too big at one point where I did start to lose control and I couldn't see and the wheels were turning and I didn't know who was making them turn.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, all right, you say you want the big pie. Well, when you get it, see what happens.
You really made it a big pie, man. You like, there are a few people I know of in the world who have the footprint that you have with your comedy, with the way you've made people feel, which is, I think, crucial. So I've been lucky enough to travel all over the world for comedy and otherwise. And I'm always impressed at how many places I go to where they know you. What's interesting is what they feel about you and how they feel it. I want to know when you decided, and if it was an active choice, to take many of the things that ostracized you at a young age and turn them into the tool that made you bring people to you and bring people together. Like So many people grew up being teased about their face, their weight, their vibe, their voice, their everything. Very few people have taken that coal, crushed it into a diamond, and shared it with everybody around the world. Was there like a conscious moment where you did that? And how did you ensure that the audience was laughing with you and not at you?
I want to say about 4 years into it, because my whole act in the beginning, when I first started doing stand up, was I was just doing characters and impressions, and everything was a situation with cartoons or this character. So it's like it was nothing to do with me. It was like he's entertaining. He can do all these characters, voices, and sound effects, and he's painting pictures, but you don't really know anything about the guy.
Yeah.
And I remember I did a Comedy Central show called Premium Blend, and I did a bit about being at a nightclub and how I only wanted to dance with big girls because if I'm dancing with a big girl, then we would get tired at the same time. And I remember it was the first bit that I put out there like that, where it's like, wow, that was actually personal.
Yeah.
You know? And for some reason, like it started with that one bit, and then it just started expanding from there. But, you know, of course there's self-deprecating, and then there's just like, hey man, look, this is just me, and either you're cool with it or you're not cool with it. I'm gonna be good either way.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I think it was just that whole, I don't care, call me whatever you want. I've already gone through years of this as a kid. You
Okay,
can't
that's
phase me now.
interesting.
So it's like whatever. And then the more shows I would do, and the more laughter, and afterwards it's like, okay, well, if I'm this big joke and people just want to make fun or laugh at me, why would you want to talk to me after the show? Why would you want to get in line for a photo? Look, I'm wearing freaking New Balance with a stain on it right now. I got a hoodie that I'm wearing. It's not fashionable, but it keeps me warm. It fits. By maintaining certain things and not letting the business turn me into something else. That I think I did have to work on, because you can get consumed really quick. I wish I could make everybody happy, but you can't. But I just think it's one of those, people understand and they relate to people who have flaws, someone who's not trying to pretend to be perfect.
Yeah. We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break. What did the business want to turn you into in the beginning?
Oh, dude, man. Well, when the money starts coming in, all right, everybody who goes from having a certain amount to all of a sudden, whoom, overnight, the money quadruples, and you're like, what the? So, of course, for me, out the gate, man, I bought 2 Hummers. I went from and I was still living in an apartment. So yeah, the money will mess with you. Yes, I had 2 Hummers while
Same
living.
color or different colors?
Different colors.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
All right.
different colors. But I was
I mean,
living
then
in
you're
an
not that
apartment.
crazy.
Oh man, so I just started doing stuff like that, putting TVs and PlayStations in the car, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? But at the time, I'm like, how cool is this?
Yeah.
I was just so excited. I'd never seen money like that before, and so yeah, I did a lot of stuff. And
But
the
you,
sa-
but
and
you
the
know what
same-
I love. But you know what I loved about your vibe. So there were 2 things that I found impressive. Is that, like, one, just personally on the bus, what I loved about rolling with you on your tour bus was how diverse the people were, the schools of thought were. I mean, I would be having fights about Republican politics, Democratic politics. I remember your bus was the first time I realized that this was even like a thing. You know what I mean? Because where I come from, there is no just like strict delineation. It isn't you're Republican, you're Democrat. We don't have that. And I always say to people, this is my opinion, I always say to people, I think one of the worst things that's happened in America is that it's become Democrat, Republican, blue, red, because it makes it that people have chosen a side or a thing before they engage in the topic. Whereas in South Africa and in many other places, we just fight about each topic. And you find like people agree on different things and people disagree on different things, but you find coalitions and moments that connect you. And I love that on your bus, for instance. We used to have arguments for days. You would just sit in the corner laughing, by the way, which I love.
Yeah.
You were the best audience member. And you would just like ask like a really, like, it wasn't incendiary, but you'd ask a question. You'd be like, but Trevor, what about this? Or you'd be like, but Rick, what about that? And it would spark a whole conversation. But I do love that your environment encouraged that. And what I found particularly interesting was, you, as Gabriel, have said, I don't engage in politics, etc. But you not once said to me, hey, Trevor, don't talk about certain things on stage. Not even, and I mean, there's not even one time when you came to me and said, hey, man, please don't say, hey, that thing you said about slavery, or hey, no. You gave me the full leeway. You gave me, And maybe that goes into like the mentorship of it all. Anybody who asks me, and thousands of people, anybody, they go like, oh, who made your career? And I go, guys, I couldn't have gotten, you see me on the Daily Show and stuff. I'm like, none of that would have happened without Gabriel Iglesias.
Oh, come on, dude.
No. I'm telling you, you know why? Because you genuinely, one of the greatest gifts you gave me was you put me in front of audiences that I never otherwise would have been put in front of. And there's still comedians today who I know of who don't go to the markets you took me to. Places where people exist in America, but I learned, thanks to you, they feel like they don't exist. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody comes and does a show. Nobody even considers them politically because they don't really shift a needle in either direction. They're just like these forgotten places in America. And you put me there. So let's talk a little bit about mentorship in that way. You were mentoring me. You were teaching me about merchandise. You were teaching me about comedy, about sets, about... in fact, here's a story. The only
Mexican
time...
food.
man, food. Oh, we're going to talk about food.
Tacos.
Oh my God. The only time you told me something instructive where you said, don't do that or do that was, I was doing a set and you're on stage, you're going from one show to the next. And I have a whole host of material. I have a bunch of material, but I've been doing the same set with you on the road. And so at some point I was like, man, let me switch it up. I've been doing the same jokes. Let me switch this thing up. And I had a great set and I walk off stage and Fluffy's standing there almost like not angry, but just like a disappointed father or uncle, And you were just like, hey, you're like, yo, what happened to the joke? And I'm like, what joke? And you're like, you didn't do Nah Mean. And I had this joke, Nah Mean, and was, I did it like on Leno, and it was a great joke, and I loved it. But I was like, I don't need to do it. And you're like, no, these people haven't seen that joke. I was like, yeah, but it's fine. You're like, no, you need to let these people see that joke. And I was like, no. And I was like, the time, and you're like, hey, and you looked at me. It was like a coach in a basketball movie. And you looked at me. You were like Denzel or somebody, one of those motivational. And you looked at me and you were like, hey, you remember something. These people weren't with us yesterday, and they weren't with us the night before, and they won't be with us tomorrow. You might be getting sick of these jokes, but they're not sick of them. You go out there and you do it like it's the first time ever. And he said, those people deserve Nah Mean. You go out there and you give them Nah Mean. And I was like, I can't go back out there. I'm going to look like an idiot. I've just got off stage. I'll do it tomorrow. And you're like, no. They're like, yo, man, he forgot to tell you a joke. So he's going to come back on stage. And I'm like, I can't come back. What is going on right now? I can't come back. And you were like, you go out there and you show them what you're made of. You give them their joke. And then I came back on stage like, this is the most awkward experience I've ever had in my life. No opening act has ever had an encore. I'm willing to bet money. No opening act. And I went out and I did the joke and it got a standing ovation. And I came back and you just hugged me and you were like, that's what I'm talking about. So like, talk me through this. Why do you have comedians on your show who don't perform your style of comedy, who may not even like compliment your style of comedy and could at times like, surprise your audience? Why would you do that?
I thought you were funny. I thought you were very funny, and the show, you added more to the show. You were so different. You were so unique. Whenever I put on shows, I look at the entire show as a whole. I don't just look at my performance. I look at what's the fan experience. Are people going to enjoy it from beginning, middle, end? Are they just sitting there waiting? So I did have a lot of comics on the show. I mean, at the time, I think with you was Rick Gutierrez, Alfred Robles, Martine, Sean Latham.
Yeah.
And then of course,
and then there were people who'd rotate and pop in
between. Yeah. So it was already, most comics only have one guy, maybe two. The only other person that I know that had more people on their show was Kevin Hart. And I know this because I went to a show one time. I'm like, wow. There's a lot of people on the show. But I enjoyed what you did. And, it's funny that you brought up the Nah Mean bit because we love that joke so much that your nickname...
My nickname became Nah Mean.
Nah Mean.
Yeah.
So Martin, when he told me today, because I was going to bring him with me, he goes, hey man, give Nah Mean a big hug for me. So even years later, that stands as Nah Mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe the reason I'm asking this question is because I feel like we live in a country and in a world where people are less likely to engage in ideas and other human beings who aren't completely aligned with them. And here you have this person who has done really well building an audience that has an idea of them, but then every time you are risking the association with another human being, and you are risking the audience that you've built for that human being who doesn't have much. Why are you doing this? Why take the risk?
I don't feel like it's as much a risk. Don't get me wrong. There was a couple times when I would get emails and they're like, "Hey, listen, we really like what you do, but we didn't like what one of your other comics
That's what I mean.
said."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I can see that. But for some reason, I don't know, man. It's just the only time I acted on it, and when I did, I felt terrible for it, and I still haven't fully, recovered from it, and that was with Martine. Martine's been on the road with me forever.
Yeah.
But I do remember that there was a year where we started getting a lot of complaints about certain because I tell Martine, just go out there, be you.
Yeah.
I had gotten a few emails and, talking to management, talking to all the people around me, they're like, "Hey man, look, this isn't a good thing for you." And I had a whole break in the tour, and Martine went off to do his own thing for a while, and I missed him, and I felt like it was a breakup. But I'm like, this is still my friend. But if the way that things went down, it didn't sit well with me, and I felt terrible for it. And I'm like, I should have just had a conversation with him versus just letting all the powers that be dictate that. But it was one of those things where I like to support and make sure that everybody around me does whatever they do. And if they have a different idea or different opinion, that just, I don't want everybody to think the same way as me.
Yeah.
That's boring. I want people to go up there and shake the room up a little bit, have me say something that's so crazy I can make a callback on it, or say something that's like, whoa, I like that. Because I remember one time I had Rick Gutierrez on the road with me. And I told him, "Hey, dude, what the hell?" I said, "I just saw your set. Why did you didn't do this? You didn't do this. You didn't do this." I'll call people out when they don't do the stuff they're supposed to do. Clearly. And he goes, "Oh man, I was just I didn't want you to have to follow the thing, the this and this and this." I go, "Rick, I'm a headliner too. If I can't follow you, I shouldn't be closing the show.
Oh,
you go out there tomorrow and you put your stank on that stage, all right? And let me worry about following you. You putting on a kick-ass show will make me work that much harder. I don't want to be lazy and complacent. You going out there and killing that stage elevates my game because now I have to perform better than I'm used to performing.
Right.
Because it makes you a better comic.
Right.
It makes you better.
It inspired me. I mean, it's the reason I do my tours the way I do now. I was thinking about how some of my favorite memories, genuinely, whenever people ask me about America and they go like, "What are your favorite memories in America?"
Food.
I want to say 8 out of 10 of those memories involve you or where you took me. I like there are places I remember, and I've told jokes about some of these things, but like the woman in Lexington, Kentucky, who came up to us after the show, and she was so sweet, and she's like, I just want to let you know you're by far the funniest and handsomest nigga I done ever seen. And I remember but I had never experienced this firsthand. You see America on TV, and here she was. And I know it's a strange thing to say, but it's like seeing somebody who is not trying to be racist, nor even thinks they're saying a thing that she was just like, what? And when the best, and I did tell the joke, but it was all true. It was delivered to me. My favorite was when Alfred and the gang said to her, they said, "Yo, you can't say that. You can't say that." And then she's like, "What? I can't say he's the funniest? I didn't mean to offend y'all." And we were like, "No, that's not the part of the sentence that was a problem." But I think of the memories I've had. And one of my favorite memories on the road with you, so there were a few. So this was in El Paso, Texas.
Okay.
You were the person who took me to El Paso. I'm new in America. I'm on the tour bus with Fluffy. And we get to this town. And El Paso at that time was this really interesting place where you were in America, but it really felt like you were experiencing a city in Mexico. Do you know what I mean? It had had an interesting feel to it.
It is a border town. It is neighboring to Mexico.
Right. On this day, I remember I was trying to look for I was searching for a Foot Locker. This was years ago. We are talking 2012. Yeah.
Wow.
So this is 2012. So I remember I'm using Google Maps. Google Maps wasn't as sharp as it is today. So I'm using Google Maps and I go Foot Locker. I'm like, that's where people buy their shoes in America. I'm like, all right, Foot Locker. And Google Maps shows me a place. Without even thinking, I leave the tour bus that we're sleeping on. And I just start walking, and I just follow Google Maps, follow Google Maps, follow Google Maps. The more I'm walking, I'm like, wow, the people are getting more and more brown. People are getting more and more brown as we walk in. I'm like, all right, people are getting more and more brown. And then Google tells me to like walk up onto some like embankment, and next thing I know, but now there's this weird part where I'm essentially walking upstairs, and it looks like I'm going into a mall, I guess, but I'm walking upstairs, but very quickly the stairs are enclosed in there's like a cage. You know what I mean? So you couldn't like hop off the stairs on either side. Does this make sense?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm walking, and now there's a lot of people coming towards us and a lot of people going where we're going. So now it's the inertia of the crowd, and you're walking. Then you're on a bridge, and I'm walking on a bridge, and I'm like, is that a river? What is happening right now? Where is this mall?
Oh my God.
And then as I walk down the bridge, I see a sign, and it says, "Welcome to Mexico." Now, in my ignorant brain, I didn't know, because I've never walked across a border in my life. To me, borders happen at like ports and at airports. And I'm just like, wait, what is it? Bienvenidos a Mexico. I'm like, what? So now I'm walking, I'm like, oh shit, no. This is wrong. This is clearly wrong. So I turn around. Now I'm causing so much commotion in the flow that the border agents are like there now. And then he's like, hey, come on. He's like, come on, vámonos. So I'm like, no, I'm sorry, it's the wrong, but I can't.
Foot Locker.
Yeah, I can't hop to the other side. I'm like, I'm trying to go to Foot Locker. And now they're pushing me. The crowd's, everyone's pissed off at me, understandably. I'm like trying to get to the other, I can't get to the, and finally I like get down to where he is, and he's like, hey, and he's like, ándale. And I'm like, no, sorry, sir, I don't speak Spanish. Hey man, I was trying to get to Foot Locker. And he's like, what? He's like, no, keep going. So I'm like, no, keep going where? I can't go. I'm like, I can't go to Mexico. I'm with Gabriel Iglesias. I can't go to Mexico. And then he's like, what? Come on. Then he's like, where's your passport? Then I was like, I don't have a passport. Then he's like, what? Then I'm like, no, not like that. I just don't have my passport with me. I didn't think. Then he's like, why don't you have your passport? Then I'm like, I don't travel with my passport when I go to Foot Locker. This is not a thing that I do. Yo, we stood there for 15 minutes. I sat there begging this man not to deport me to not my country. Because it's one thing to get deported to your country. It's another thing to get deported to not your country. And then I'd never done this before, and I have never done it since. I pulled out my phone and I said, wait. Let me Google me. And now I'm typing my name into Google, and I'm praying to God. I'm like, Google, you better not mess with me on this one. I'm like, Trevor Noah. And I've like hit it. And then my face comes up, and then the Tonight Show, and then like us, like on, all, and I was like, you see? And he looks at it and he's like, huh. He's like, oh shit, you with Fluffy.
Oh my God.
He's like, oh yeah, oh man, oh you guys doing a show? I'm like, yeah, you know Fluffy? He's like, yeah man, of course I know Fluffy. Then he's like, hey man, I love Fluffy. He's like, yeah, aquí don't know.
Oh my God.
He's like, oh Fluffy. And this guy, I will never forget. Yo, I walked, and he jumped me over to the other side. He's like, yeah, you shouldn't walk across a border without a passport. I was like, so I was going to Foot Locker. I did not know that I was going to a border. And he let me come back to you. And I remember I was telling Alfred and the guys that day. And Alfred, classic Alfred, he's like, yo, not mean. He's like, I told you, man. He's like, you Dominican, bro. I told you, man. They can see it. You might not see it, but they can see it, man. You Dominican, bro. I was like, yo, that was the day I was like, screw you, Google, and thank God for Fluffy. Don't go anywhere, because we got more What Now after this. Easily the best experience you and I shared for me was your fans. You would talk about something on stage, and if you made the mistake of mentioning something, your fans would start to bring it to the show.
Yes.
You know? And one of the things you talked about was loving cake. And so at all your shows, Gabe, it was like, I close my eyes right now and I can picture it backstage with every cake you can imagine would be waiting backstage, like every cake. And I remember I joined the tour. I felt like the African who had just come into this world, whereas I was like, there's just cakes all the time. Because I'm not even lying. When I grew up, cake was a thing that would happen on occasion. I think it still is. Cake is not, you don't just bump into cakes all the time in South Africa. Every day we were on tour, there was a minimum of 12 to 14 cakes, maximum
we had a cake table backstage at the shows because people would constantly bring chocolate cakes, or you got to try my cousin's cake, or you got to try this cake.
Do you remember the penis cake?
I've gotten a lot of penis cakes. I'm sorry.
That penis cake was one of the best cakes I've ever eaten in my life. I remember nobody wanted
It was
to
a
eat
cake
it.
in the shape of a penis. It
Yeah.
wasn't like...
Oh, it wasn't a cake made of penises. Come on, get your head out the gutter.
This dick cake. Here you go.
No, can't make a cake out of dicks. Come on, it doesn't hold. The eggs don't blend with it well. No, someone brought a cake that was a massive penis, giant penis, right? And I remember nobody wanted to touch the cake, and I had become the de facto cake taster. 9 out of 10 cakes weren't worth tasting or eating. And then that dick cake came. And it was weird. You know how there's that thing that
And no matter what angle, which side
no,
you decide to try to cut a piece.
No. You were getting the balls on one side, you're getting the shaft on the other, you're getting the head on the other. And I remember everyone standing there. And you know the show, Is It Cake?
Yeah.
This was the opposite. It was almost like, is it dick? Because it's like they didn't believe it was a cake. I was like, guys, it's a cake. They're like, I don't know, man. I'm like, it's a cake. We can eat it. It doesn't matter what it looks like. They're like, I don't know, man. I don't want to eat dick. I was like, guys, you're not eating dick. You're eating cake. You can't eat dick with a spoon. And they were like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can. And so I was like, well, I'm going in. And they were like, you going to eat the dick, Namin? I was like, I'm going to eat the cake. I'm going to eat the cake. They're like, yo, Namin eating the dick.
Namin eating the dick.
Namin eating the dick. And I was like, man, you know what, you guys. And I ate it. And I turned to everyone. I was like, yo, you guys got to get some of this dick. And everyone was like, nah, you lying. You just want to. And I was like, everybody. And I'll never forget, there was a moment where we were all gathered around this giant penis on a table. And we were just all like, man, this is amazing. This is some good ass dick. This is the best dick we've ever. Easily some of my favorite memories. But what it also triggered.
And what
in me,
everybody wants to know is where did you start? Did you start on the head, the shaft, or the balls?
I don't even know where I just went in. I still try and find that. I don't know where the bakery is. I'll try and find it. But this triggered a random memory of mine that I've always wondered about, sort of what you said about receiving emails. I always wanted to know, like, how you dealt with this and how you moved through this. There was a time when, you know, you went to the doctors and they were like, hey, man, Gabriel, you can't be eating as much as you're eating. You know, like, we're worried about your health, you know, your heart, everything. You told the audience these stories. You're like, yeah, I got to cut down and everything. And you started boxing. You started losing weight. And I'll never forget this, because this really, like, threw me off as a human being and as a performer. There were some fans of yours who were angry that you were losing weight.
Yeah.
They were like, I'm not, more than any
You're
political
not going to be
thing.
fluffy anymore. Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm going to live longer, maybe? I don't know. Yeah, but I did have some people that were getting upset because it was going against the fluffy thing, you know? And it's like, but come on, man. It's like, why is this even a concern?
That is
You should be
still
celebrating
wild to me.
the fact that I'm trying to make my life better. But yeah, some people did not receive it that way.
But I think it's a valuable conversation to have in society. We take for granted how much the way we are makes people comfortable. And if we dare to change that, it changes how they feel in relation to us. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I always felt like that illuminated something quite powerful that we're still dealing with today in society. And it's like, what do you think you've learned? Because you have real conversations with the people, which is why I ask you, is like, what did you learn about how people see you? And then how you have to balance that with how you wish to be while still maintaining relationships with them.
I value people's opinions, especially the people that are willing to come out and support and make this work. I listen to people. I value their opinions. It's not a matter of opinion. I'm no longer young. I'm no longer a 20-year-old kid that can be 440 pounds. I'm almost 50. And if I want to continue that, we already know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So in that situation where I have people that voice their opinion, well, you're not going to be fluffy no more. I can't support you. Those are the people whose opinion is not something that's going to work well with what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And again, if fans aren't willing to see the bigger picture and understand that I'm trying to do something to make myself better physically, not let me do something that's like, oh, all of a sudden he's political. No, I'm doing something where I'm trying to improve my quality of life because I want to be around. If they don't agree with that, then I don't want them. I don't need them. And I have to be willing to accept the fact that, all right, I'm going to lose those fans. I'm sorry.
Is that hard for you?
It is, because you always want to make everybody happy, but I'm literally trying to make people happy by killing myself. So if me killing myself is going to make someone happy, then maybe I don't want to make those people happy. And maybe I need to let those people go. And that is hard. But I know for the greater good, I got to just be willing to say, sorry, I'm not going to be fluffy. Maybe I'll just be toughy. Maybe I'll be buffy. Maybe I'll be, scruffy. I'll be something with a Y at the end of it, but I need to be around.
Man, that's why I say you continuously, like you always inspire me, man, because I think this is something that many performers, and again, I go to, like, I'm sure people deal with it in their lives, but when you're a performer, it's amplified. Many people deal with this and aren't able to articulate it and don't deal with it publicly. But there's an idea. For instance, on comedy, I'll deal with it the opposite way to you. If I do a show where I don't say anything political, sometimes people are like, what the hell are you doing? With everything that's happening in the world, you're just going to come out and make jokes? And I go, yeah, because that's what I do. Sometimes I'm just making jokes. Did you see what happened on the news today? I'm like, no, I don't watch the news every day anymore. And they go like, oh, why not? Then I go, because for my mental health, it's not great. I don't think for your mental health it's great. I don't think you should be watching the news every day. It's not good for you. I don't know. I just feel like this is not
changed. It's not it's not what we signed up for.
Exactly. It's not what we signed up for. And I'm constantly and continuously thinking about how you find a balance in life between accommodating how people have seen you and how you wish to see yourself. You know, how you wish to grow. What do you make of the conversations about weight and weight loss today? Like with Ozempic and everything. Like now when people talk about losing weight and Ozempic and all these things, do you ever think about it? Do you have an opinion on it in that world?
As somebody who's used Ozempic, and by the way, Ozempic approached me years ago before it really became popular.
Oh, wow.
And they wanted me to be the spokesperson for Ozempic. They wanted me to be the they wanted me to be the guy in all the commercials, the modern day Wilford Brimley, me and my diabetes. My diabetes. When I'm dealing with my diabetes. So they approached me to be the spokesperson, but the powers that be said, hey, for what they want from you, your time commitment and what they're expecting, they're not willing to play.
Right.
And I was like, okay. But in hindsight, I would have gotten free Ozempic, and that stuff goes for like thousands on the black market. I probably could have came up, but I passed. But I've used it. I used Ozempic for a while, and they're right. Even with me, out the gate, first 2 weeks, I dropped 15 pounds. I didn't change anything. And so I can see why that would be addicting because it'll kick in right away. Now I'm taking something called Manjaro.
Oh yeah.
So
that's from Eli Lilly.
Yeah, it's the other one. But you will plateau because you lose so much.
Okay.
It's not like you just keep losing weight. No. You plateau, but it does regulate my sugar. So for example, I wear a monitor. You can't see it right now, but there's
one of those on the arm. What colors? What do you have? Like a, what is it? Like a next is the one that does continuous glucose monitoring.
Yeah, continuous glucose.
Okay, yeah.
Monitoring.
Oh yeah. I like.
So every 2 weeks I change it out, and of course you scan it like when you're at the supermarket and kind of beep, and then you kind of read. All right, that's what I'm worth today. And that's been super helpful, along with just trying to be somewhat active.
Yeah.
I'm not as active as I would like to be. I don't do the boxing thing anymore, but I'm still moving.
Yeah, man. You have had some of the more honest conversations about food and the emotional connection it gives us, and the support and the like, I know for a fact, the reason I love food the way I do is because it reminds me of moments in my life when things were okay. Do you know what I mean? Man, there was never a moment in my life where we were broke and we had good food. And so food has this interesting connection to my brain that makes me feel safe. It makes me feel seen. It makes me feel welcome. It makes me feel, And I wondered, like, if over the years, because we haven't spoken about it in such a long time, but if over the years you've tapped into that connection with food, because I know you and I, we literally talk about it while eating, like Arby's or whatever. It would just be like, the way, remember how food makes it? And I just wondered if you've had, like, if you've worked on that more, if with therapy or whatever, just like, have you delved more into that space of what food means to you as a person?
Food for me has always been comfort food. If I'm dealing with something, when you eat, you have that moment where you're just like everything makes sense. Like, for example, my favorite thing to eat in the world is just a plain cheese quesadilla. Plain cheese quesadilla. And people go, really? That's what you like? You could eat anywhere you want, but you want a plain cheese quesadilla?
Few things that
I go, what? Plain cheese quesadilla makes me think of my childhood. My mom would make me a quesadilla. and that was just it. That's all I needed. I just needed a piece of cheese and some a tortilla, fold it up. My mom would, make it on the stove, and I was a happy camper. And so anytime I have a quesadilla, it's very much comforting to me. It feels safe. It takes me back to a time when I had my mom.
And you were close to your mom.
Very close.
Hey, man. As I say, you and I were brothers on that trip, like figuratively and literally in the food. And I don't know. To see how much self-worth and how much value you gave to overweight people all over America, where you didn't allow them to be defined as being lazy, as being slobs, as like you gave people just like a feeling of being seen. I remember when you said to me with my merchandise, I was making T-shirts and you had helped me make them, and I didn't even know merch was a thing. And then you said, like, get your sizes and split them out. And I was like, all right, I'm going to need small, medium, large. And then you were like, yo, not mean. You're like, where's the double XL? Where's the triple XL? And I was like, you're joking, right? And you're like, no, I'm not joking. You got to think about everybody. And I was like, where I'm from, there isn't a 4X. I wasn't even joking. And it was a learning, but to see the people's faces when you would have their size. And it's this weird, complicated thing where I think in society, we like to impose a singular idea. So you want to go, well, if you're fat, then no T-shirt for you. But you taught me that humanity in such a beautiful way. You made those people feel seen. You taught me to always try and see people as much as you can. Just see them, meet them where they are, and then hopefully by holding their hand, you both embark on a journey that takes you in the right direction. And so I guess that takes me to the question, that I ask everybody at the end of every episode. And that is like, what now? Gabriel Iglesias has in many ways done everything. There are few, maybe none, no comedians who are going to sell out stadiums. Like Dodger Stadium is not a joke. Like, you know what I mean? I'm still fighting with selling. Like as soon as an arena gets to like 15,000, it's like, oh, clench your butt cheeks, boys. Here we go. Ooh. And you've done it. No, it's true. You've done it. You've toured the world. And so I would love to know, like, for Gabriel Iglesias, like what now? What do you hope to see yourself doing in the next few years? And don't limit it to career, by the way. I want to know, like, as a human being, what now for you?
Honestly, I think that it's time that I take care of this weight situation. I've managed to be able to achieve every goal I have ever set for myself in my career. I've done everything I've wanted to do, and I think personally I have failed myself by not working better on relationships, working better on maintaining a certain level of just health. Mm-hmm. I've allowed myself to, I've made excuses for years, and I think that now it's okay to get off the road for a little while. It's okay to take a little break and start working on myself. During COVID, I was so depressed because I couldn't get on stage for almost a year. But during that time, I actually started working out and seeing a diabetes specialist and started getting healthier because I was actually able to get on a schedule and a routine. And I lost about 75 pounds in that year. And then as soon as I went back on tour, I gained back 50 of it. And I'm like, wow, if I would have just kept this up for like another year, I could have, but I got back into my old habits, and I got used to being comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think that by saying it out loud and by saying this in front of people, and I'm trying to make myself accountable because I hate letting people down. And I think that if people know that this is the goal, they'll be supportive of it. And again, if some people don't want to support me making myself better, then maybe those people I don't need in my life anymore.
Yeah, man, so. I think they'll be with you. I think through COVID, everyone has appreciated life in a very different way. And I think they'll be with you. They'll be with you as Fluffy. They'll be with you as Buffy, as Tuffy, as Scruffy.
Scruffy.
Yeah. And I hope on a personal level, no matter what you do or don't do, you will always be enoughy.
Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. For real, man.
Love
always great, Gabe. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, man.
Christiana, nice to see you in person.
Good to see you.
This is so much fun, friend. I haven't seen you in so like this.
I know.
In the flesh.
We used to do this every day.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
We used to make a show every day.
Every single day of our lives. I was like, I loved it.
You liked it so much you quit and left us.
Oh man, I'm excited to have this conversation today because I'm excited for all conversations, but like this conversation is one that I don't even think we'll be able to complete today, which I think all good conversations are, strangely enough. And this one in particular intrigues me because everybody's talking about Ozempic, right? And we're not talking about Ozempic, the product today. I think that's going to be important for everyone to understand. We're just going to use that as a name for, these weight loss drugs. Because it's Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Wegovy, you name it, The point is we're talking about inject, lose weight, apparently feel great. That's my catchphrase, by the way, if they want to buy it from me. I'm available, Eli Lilly. I'm available at Novodorsk. I never know how to say their name.
Yeah, I can't say it either.
I feel like we were at an interesting inflection point in society where there was a point when this would have just been would have been shunned completely.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? People would be like, "This is trash.
You're cheating."
Yeah, and then now it's slowly we're like,
Yeah.
it's like Republican Democrat. It's like 50-50 now.
Basically, I was like,
Yeah. Where do you stand on this?
Oh my God, Trevor, you can't ask me that at the beginning of the thing.
That's exactly that's exactly where you start at the beginning.
I am pro-choice when it comes to Ozempic.
Oh, I like this.
I
Well
am
played.
pro-choice. I'm pro-choice. That's what I am. Yeah.
So you have no moral judgment or opinion on it?
No, I've seen friends and family members on the drug and seen how it's changed their life.
Okay, and so this is what I'd love to know. Change their lives in what way?
Beyond the weight, they seem more comfortable in their bodies. Some of them had like back and knee issues. Some people it was just like they were struggling. Some people was like it's kind of regulated their appetite. They're drinking less. So when you see it from that perspective, it's been like, oh wow. So I'm pro the choice, but I'm not pro the societal pressure that I think some people feel to take.
Okay. Well, let's bring in our special guest today. I wanted to bring in a writer, a cultural critic, and somebody who I think has some of the most informed and then fantastic personal opinions on this topic because she has written about it. You know her work probably from The New Yorker if you read. If you don't read, then maybe you don't know her. And this will be your introduction to her. Gia Tolentino, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Are you kidding me? Thank you for joining us. I'm going to apologize in advance for all the ignorance I'm going to bring to this conversation. But I feel like it's my purpose. As my mother used to say when I was young, be of service. Be of service. So if I'm surrounded by two brilliant, smart people, I have to now balance the conversation the other way around. I think you heard the question I asked Christiana. So let's start from your personal, just like purely personal, no scientific, no nothing point of view. Where do you stand when it comes to these Ozempic type drugs?
I think about Ozempic the way I think about a lot of cultural phenomena, which is I have a lot of thoughts about it at a sort of macro level. And then in terms of anyone's individual use or not use of it, other than I have a group chat where my friends sometimes send pictures of celebrities and to make fun of the fact that I never know who it is because everyone looks so different. But yeah, I mean, I'm pro-choice too. It's none of my damn business what anyone's doing with their own body.
It's interesting you bring up the thing about celebrities because, like, I've noticed now there's a we talk about the shame game and the blame. There's this game now where people see someone and they're like, oh, that's Ozempic. Oh, that's also. I've noticed with me, depending on like how someone takes a picture of me, someone will be like, "You on Ozempic?" I've never lost weight, but then sometimes I go, like, it seems like it's become in a way, it's almost become a bit of a slur or like an insult. It's like, oh, I see you're on Ozempic. You're one of them.
Yeah.
Trump is the only one that you really need to, because the Republican Party doesn't have an opinion.
He's on Ozempic. Everyone calling him.
Wait, what?
They're saying Ozempic Trump. They're calling him Ozempic Trump.
Donald Trump on Ozempic?
Allegedly. Please, MAGA, don't come for me, please. Allegedly.
Wow.
He looks different. I believe it.
Damn. I can see him now. Oh. Ozempic.
Well, this I do have thoughts on. I think that one of the things that our whole fascination with Ozempic is based on and it's interesting, Christiane, I wonder if you have thoughts with little kids, right? Part of beauty is thinness as it's taught to you from a really early age, like fatness, queerness, darkness, all of these things are like coded as signs of deviance. Like you learn as a really young child in Disney movies, in anything, like beauty is really coded as morality, and there's this Protestant work ethic thing, right? It's something that you should achieve through hard and punitive work and discipline, right?
Yeah.
And when people use Ozempic, it's like, you cheated. You skipped the hard work part, you know?
Yeah.
And so you got the thing we demanded of you, but now we find this a vaguely immoral thinness.
Like you worked hard to achieve the right thing. Okay, I hear what you're saying. It's funny because I don't know how it was for you growing up, but so I've had an interesting journey with weight and how I perceive it and fatness, etc. Because I grew up in South Africa. Genuinely, growing up, this is such a weird thing to try and explain to people. In South Africa, you did not get made as much fun of if you were fat. Like a fat person, you just be like, I mean, I don't even remember if we had that many names, but I remember all the ones for skinny people was Sticks Manzanza. It was that was my favorite ones. Sticks Manzanza, Skinny Manili. It was like there were all these names where it was just like you're a twig, you're thin, and it was a sign there of a lack of having.
Yeah.
If you got married and you didn't gain weight, people would say that your marriage is not going well. Literally, they'd be like, is your wife not treating you well? Ay, man, no, man, look at you. If I would come home from the States, and like many times I'd come back from America and I gain weight. And so whenever I go home, people will be like, you're looking good, man. You're looking good. America's treating you well. You're looking, Trevor, no, man, you're looking good. Look at your cheeks. You're looking good. And then, and so where I grew up, fatness was considered like sort of a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then being skinny was like, your life is not going well and you're not making the right choices.
For sure.
So it's interesting how it flips, you know, and I'm sure it's time as well.
But in both cases, it's about wealth, right? I mean, in both cases,
for sure.
Like the thing that is valued is always the thing that's correlated with wealth. And I feel like that's been the case. You look through art history, right? The fuller figures are valued at a time when it's, you know,
right,
the wealthy, signifying plenty. And now it's signifying, you know, I got a trainer, I got to cook, I got to, you know.
I mean, it's funny that you mention the childhood stuff that it brings up because recently it was approved for children.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Right.
And there are parents who are making the decision to give.
I don't know about that.
I mean, Trevor, that's your instinct. It's like very visceral. You're like giving it to kids. But
I'll tell you why. I do not think that these types of drugs should be approved for children. I personally believe that there are still a whole host of things that you can do to get that child. Like if you're giving them this drug, I'm assuming it's because their weight is really detrimental to their health. Otherwise, it's weird. Like you're just trying to make like a sexy kid or something. I mean, that's weird.
It's so crazy. But I meet mothers, a lot of older girls who are like preteens and teenagers, and they'll show you pictures of their daughter and be like, oh, but this one needs to lose weight. You know, like mothers, it's so encoded in our culture that there are mothers out there and fathers out there who are just like, you need to lose weight. I mean, most people's relationship with food don't come from themselves. They often come from their parents and their families.
It's so interesting that all of this concern about what creates health for kids always comes down to food and weight, right? And it's like there's so much other stuff. It's like it's housing policy, it's like it's food stamp policy, right? It's all of these things. And it's like funding for recess and, you know, and for like physical activities and for all these things. Because, you know, there are levers you can pull to change your body, certainly during childhood, and that, you know, like it's not to say that lifestyle and what you eat doesn't affect it, but you know, I talk to doctors that are, you know, the patients their kids are in food deserts and they have nobody that can take them outside, and it's not safe to be outside where they are, so they are just kind of sitting in a room, you know, all day because of, you know, this myriad of structural factors. And so the only lever to pull for these complicating conditions is a drug like this.
And this is everywhere in the world, but America in particular is very, very good at treating the symptoms and not the cause.
Yeah.
Like very, 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 very good.
It.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like America will
you
find
make more money that way.
Yeah, America will find a lot of money to like imprison homeless people, but then won't find ways to stop people from becoming homeless.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? America
but how
will
else
find.
would you enrich the private prison?
Exactly.
companies,
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
so
how else would we?
So this feels like one of those situations again where it's like we are going to now approve a drug for children but not ask ourselves why these children would need that drug in the first place. Because I don't know, was Nigeria the same? What was weight like in Nigeria? Like,
it's really interesting. There is this cultural, the body that's idealized is quite hard to get. So it's like big hips, tiny waist, and big boobs and a big bum, which is pretty impossible to get. Right, most people don't have it naturally, and you're not probably going to have that after you have kids. I was always considered a bit too skinny. Like my grandma was like, I remember she saying to me once, she was crying, and my mum was like, "Why are you crying?" She was just like she calls me by my name, Amma. She was just like, "Who's going to marry Amma? She's got bones." you know, if you actually go to West Africa in particular, you see a lot of body diversity. Yeah. So you see like really tall women, really muscular women, and like in Nigeria, I think the biggest indicator about how bodies naturally are is that, does your tribe have a fattening room? Which is like before a woman gets married, she has to go to a room.
You said a fattening room.
They call it a fattening room, where you have to become fat. Because the girls are just naturally quite muscular, especially in the Southeast, quite muscular and lithe. Okay. You know what I mean? So you know what that means. Fatness is supposed to be good, a sign of fertility. But then again...
Wait, how long do you stay in the room?
Till you get fat.
I love this.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Oh, wait. Okay. It depends on how they're making you fat. Is it like foie gras?
They're giving you yams and thick food, carbohydrates basically, and lots of meat to make you bigger.
But they're not like force feeding you. You're just eating.
I mean, the girls didn't want to get fat or get married, so it's kind of like.
All right. Like, once again, a fun Christiana story.
I'm sorry, guys.
Ends with oppression.
It always gets dark.
Well, I want to know, Jay, like, when and why did you start writing about Ozempic? Because you were one of the first people writing about this, before it became the wave, before it became the trend. I remember there was a moment pre-Ozempic. It just wasn't a thing. Mm-hmm. And then there were whispers. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you heard Elon Musk was on it. And you're like, wait, what's happening here?
Yeah. Well, I kind of think of the Kardashians as, the sort of weather vane for what the winds of sort of capital.
Hilarious.
And, like deeply punitive, technologically based beauty standards. Like you can literally see written upon their bodies what women all across the country are going to then do, in this really kind of amazing, terrifying way. And so, I think it was like that. No one had ever heard of it. And then, I started to hear about there was this shot that was intended for treating like chronic conditions caused by type 2 diabetes that women in Hollywood, some women in Hollywood were taking, and their bodies were suddenly visibly changing. And it was interesting to me to begin with because, like I grew up in, the 90s, the early 2000s in sort of very conservative Houston, Texas, like deep within this hegemonic, like white dominated, the age of sort of the only people that are beautiful are like Paris Hilton, and Britney Spears. And that was the body prescribed. And then we had this sort of Obama era, grand democratization of culture, which included, people started to have open dialogue about how you could be healthy at every size, which you can, right? And that all sorts of bodies are beautiful. And I always felt a little skeptical of the sort of Dove ad body positivity thing for reasons we can get into later. But I thought, okay, finally, like we have reached a new era. And maybe it will unlock the sort of hold that white diet culture has had on America since the 20s, basically. And then this happened, and it was like, oh no, we're swinging. Yeah. I mean, that was my initial interest. I was like, I thought we had already changed, that we were going to stay on this train of openness, and I don't know, and the sharp swing back, and what that meant for the way people talked and thought about beauty, I thought was extremely interesting. And then so I just started tracking it.
So here's the thing I wonder though, do you think that utopia can ever exist? And, because I mean, like, I don't know, sometimes I'm a little simple in this thinking, in that I go, we're still animals, and animals also judge each other based on some physical aspect, and we're no different. I just think what happens to us that's particularly different is there are tastemakers that exist in different spheres who sort of like pull the levers to decide, like how we define where the Overton window of beauty actually exists and where the one of health is. Do you think that our conversations these days lie in beauty, or do they lie in health? Or is it people using health to masquerade their views on what they think beautiful is?
Yeah, I think it's like the latter, right? And I think even if we were in this utopia where we accepted everyone's bodies. Like, I think The Economist did a piece talking about the fact that like women's salaries are pegged to what they weigh.
Yes.
And that if you lose a certain amount of weight, your salary goes up.
Yeah.
So it's just like the market forces, for whatever reason, we know the reasons, reward being skinny.
And by the way, did you see the opposite is true for men?
Interesting.
The more a woman gains in weight, the more her salary goes down. And with men, the bigger they get, like the rounder. I guess it's like because you look like King Richard or those vibes. You just like the
Henry
more like
VIII.
Henry. Yeah, it's like those vibes. Like to all my subjects.
Yeah.
The more like bulbous you become, your money actually, like, people don't penalize you at all. They're just like, yeah, this dude knows what he's talking about. He ate a pig that had an apple in its mouth.
That. Yeah. And I think for women, it's always going to be, you are judged, that connection between morality and beauty and health. I think people just collapse it into one. They don't see them as different things, even if they use a language like, don't you want to be healthy?
Right.
You know, but they're saying to someone, don't you want to lose weight? And I think it's going to be harder for women to escape that, unfortunately.
So, okay, let me ask this question now. Is there a moral way for people to engage in conversations about weight loss, health, and how it pertains to people? Like, Gia, you know, you've done a lot of research in this. Christiana, I know you've talked about this for years. But like, where do you think we find the sweet spot?
I think it exists, and I think probably the people that are the best at it are fat people. You know, I think that there are a lot of people that have spent, you know, that's been like this cultural discursive work in the last 15 years to establish a whole vocabulary for how we could be talking about these things, right? And it's incredibly difficult in reporting this piece, even, and in talking to people. Like, I think that the fear of fat and the bias against it would come out quite casually. I'm sure it's built into me in some way, you know, in the way that I think about it. But I think that there is a way to get some basic facts on the table, right? Mm-hmm. That BMI is based on, you know, like BMI is like a racist, kind of eugenicist standard, and there can be serious conditions that correlate with obesity, but that doesn't mean that, you know, obesity or excess weight is in itself harmful, you know. And so much of this is really arguably down to physician bias as well, right? Like there are OBGYNs that won't treat women over a certain BMI. There's so many, like, statistically, doctors self-report, you know, beliefs about patients that are quote unquote overweight or obese. And, you know, they treat them differently. They underdiagnose, they undertreat, they attribute all health problems to you need to lose weight in ways that are never sort of suspected about people of different sizes. And, you know, there's like...
Yeah, I think there was a story I read. It might have been one of your stories, actually, where there was a woman who was struggling to breathe.
Yeah.
And
it was blood.
Yes, yeah. That was.
You're like, oh, your lungs are simply fat. You know, she's just dying. You know, like
and she actually had did she have lung cancer?
Blood clots.
She had blood clots. I think, yeah.
But I think, you know, you mostly find the healthy way of talking about it in people who have had to like advocate for themselves against all of these things for a long time. I also think fundamentally, probably the healthiest way to talk about health is to kind of set weight aside altogether, right? And talk about other metrics like
VO2 max and...
I don't know what that means.
No, really. I hear VO2 max is the gold standard. That's actually, they say VO2.
What is that?
So VO2 max is your body's ability to withdraw or to extract oxygen from every breath.
There you go. I love that.
Apparently that's it.
There are so many other metrics to talk about health that have nothing to do with weight. And probably that would be the healthiest way of talking about weight, is having it be just sort of a incidental byproduct of all of these other lifestyle factors.
We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break. Let's talk a little bit about the drugs themselves, like the actual way that the drugs work. I was lucky. I had a conversation with the CEO of Eli Lilly and some of the scientists who work there, because I wanted to understand what is this thing. So I'll break it down. And Gia, I know you're the expert, so please jump in. A few decades ago, there was a scientist who discovered that there was essentially a hormone that was released into your body that told your body you were full, right? And they wanted to study what this thing was, GLP-1 they called it, because they never call it easy things like Patrick, which they should, because then it would help us. If scientists were just like, we're going to call this Patrick, then we all know what Patrick is. But anyway, scientists found GLP-1, this is something that makes your body feel full, makes you feel satisfied, I think is a more important word. And they wanted to study it, but they couldn't. They're like, all right, how do we figure it out? They found a lizard. They always find a lizard. And they're like, we can reproduce this. You fast forward, they realize that this drug can help people who have diabetes. Mm-hmm. Then they're like, okay, this is for diabetes, this is for diabetes. But then someone goes, wait a minute. It's not just diabetes. People are losing weight.
Yeah.
And they're like, huh. And then like all drug companies, the same way they did with Viagra, they were like, we're trying to help people with their blood pressure. And they're like, have you noticed that all these people are getting erections? And they're like, everyone stop. We don't give a shit about blood pressure. We've just struck gold. But what I found most fascinating about this is to what you said, Christiana, when we started the conversation. If we have the conversation about weight loss, I feel like we're missing something bigger that we're discovering right now. And these drugs are helping us understand something about self-control and how it has been robbed from us. Because people take Ozempic, Zeppa, whatever, right? The first thing they do is they don't eat as much. We knew that would happen. Yeah. Okay, fine, it's working. But then people go, oh, I don't drink alcohol the same way anymore. Yeah. I don't watch as much TV. I don't use social media. I'm not even on my phone as much. I don't gamble as much. And you're just like, wait. What is
compulsive shopping? I read about that. Someone has stopped them compulsive shopping.
And so, I almost wonder if in discovering this solution, have we now exposed all of the poisonous problems that society has unleashed upon itself? Does this make sense?
Yeah, we don't judge gambling or drinking or online shopping in the same way that we do weight. So that was what the person was fixated on. I got on Ozempic to lose weight. But they discovered all these other parts of themselves, or they were awakened to like, I actually spend too much money. Like a woman said she was going through Target and she wasn't putting things in her cart.
Yes, this is what I mean.
In the same way. And I found that so interesting. We don't see like excessive shopping the same way we see excessive eating. And I think that's the most interesting part of the drug.
Well, this is taking it in a slightly different direction, but what this part of the conversation makes me think of, and what I think this thing that was in the back of my head when I was writing and thinking about it, was that like one of the reasons that I on a macro level find it really sad when people who are extremely thin take this to become much thinner, right? Is that like what it is to be human, like we're made up of our appetites, right? Like that's one of the defining
I like that.
things of what we seek and what we literally physically hunger for. And, like our desire for pleasure and relief and excitement, right? These things are important and they make us human. And back to the conversation about kids, it's like so much of the rise of obesity in children seems directly related to the fact that people are so afraid of fat children in the first place, right? Like that children are taught to fear their appetites and fear the snack drawer. Like the idea of just kind of natural pleasure in our appetites seems to be the thing that might possibly lead to the healthiest relationship with them in all cases, right? To not need to like indulge and have guilty pleasures and sort of secret little things, right? That if these appetites, if we could sort of treat them normally in all respects, and like it seems like American consumerist culture just blows all of these kind of compulsions sky high because of this fear we have of appetite, right?
I think my slight pushback to that is like being a Brit in America is that it's actually very hard to have a regulated relationship with the pleasure of food when there are very few pleasures. So food is like a very easy and cheap pleasure. Like I think that's okay if you're like in a country where it's like there's a park down the road, I can play tennis for free. Like it's just like you get pleasure and that humanity
it is like
everywhere.
One of the dopamine
But in
hits.
this country, I feel like food and alcohol are the only cheap, accessible pleasures.
Yeah.
But like if we were in a more balanced, I guess, culture, then I'd be like, sure, enjoy the pleasure of food because then you can regulate that pleasure because you're getting pleasure everywhere. But people don't get touched.
That's a really interesting
idea. They don't have
idea.
community. They don't have any other pleasures.
But that's what I mean, right? If we could like honor our need, like what we were saying, outside time and safety, and like the whole labor market being organized differently, so that it's not like you have to squeeze all your pleasure into like 2-minute micro installments, like 6 times a day, right? Like I think we would have a very different relationship to compulsion and appetite and pleasure and relief if if American society were set up in such a way that would like honor people as like beings that need these things.
Also, this isn't unique to America. I don't want it because like England, like
of course,
it's pretty tough right now.
Yeah.
So we're seeing similar things there too.
I think something we also have to consider is this. One of my biggest beefs is that corporations have found ways to create messaging that tricks people into making the corporation's problem their problem.
Yeah.
In the same way, oil companies scammed us into thinking that recycling was our job. Right? Mm-hmm. And they make it about individuals.
Right. Yeah.
You need to recycle.
Yeah.
No. Let me tell you something. Recycling is not our job. The job is to not make the thing in the first place. We take for granted how many times, and we ignore how many times we get tricked into believing that it's us. And I think the same thing has happened with food and indulgence in America and in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Is where, to your point, Gia, is like people have been made to feel guilty about their appetites and about their indulgence and and then we create this world where we now fight with each other. Why are you letting your kid eat so much? Well, it's my child. It's their appetite.
Yeah.
I don't want to stop. I don't want to make them guilty. And no one seems to be asked, not no one, but like, I think sometimes we forget to ask the question, like, wait, why is it impossible for your child to stop eating those chips? If we live in a society where we blame people for the addiction catching them, but don't ask who's imposing the addiction upon them, then I feel like we're playing a game of whack-a-mole, telling everybody in society that they need to be better, when in fact we're ignoring the fact that,
Yeah, for sure.
These Ozempic type drugs, as much as we're focusing on them as the conversation, I feel like they've exposed this underbelly of addiction that we've all allowed.
Yeah, I think, Trevor, what you're getting at is that we've always thought all of these things are just a question of willpower.
Yes.
And it's not about...
And responsibility.
And G, I think your piece touches on that as well. It's not about... It's not willpower. Like the system is basically working against all of us, and some of us are able to resist better than others.
And resist some of it, by the way.
And some of it, but I think it's caught all of us in a way.
Yeah, I feel like that's the whole story of the entire conversation around weight, right? Like it's who is making the money off of them and who's making the money off of the cure.
Follow
also
the money.
is like the
always follow the money.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about if we move beyond appetites per se, and we come back to the world of these drugs, what they're doing, and how people are using them. Have we now entered a new world? Gia, to what you're saying, where this will become another instance of the haves being able to escape another ill in society. It's almost like we've put a price on people being able to evade this net of addiction that has been cast upon everybody.
Also, I think, Gia, just to hop in, it's like we're talking about Ozempic so much because people lose weight and we think losing weight is the better thing to do. And now it means that there'll be a class of people that can do that and not have to go through the cruelty of fat phobia, and it's going to be the people with money that can perhaps escape that everyday cruelty, and then the people that can't do that.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that does seem maybe meaningfully new about this is that the beauty standards of the last decade seem to me to be this really kind of insidious arms race between like digital enhancement and then technological alteration to match digital enhancement. And then you digitally enhance more and then use technology to further sort of shape, inject, discipline, whatever. Like the thing that really scares me is the idea that an unaltered body or face is aberrant or deviant and sort of unacceptable. That's the thing that I find really like existentially terrifying.
Damn. Yeah, it's almost like in those when you watch those cyberpunk future movies where like people are judged because they don't have cybernetics now. So everyone has and that's an interesting way you've just put it now. It becomes judgment because it's like, well, why aren't you making yourself better?
Yeah.
And I think plenty of people who are fat and healthy and perfectly happy in their lives are now hit with this sort of unbearable wave of like, well, why don't you just get the little jab, you know?
Because now it seems like you're actively making a choice to not be healthy or to not.
Why wouldn't you conform, right? Like it's.
So here's a question I do have. I'm going to throw a few things at you, and everybody
go for it.
Trigger warnings.
Safe
everybody,
space.
Trigger warning. Gia, trigger warning, and feel free to plead the fifth. No one needs to speak.
Okay.
I don't wish to bring anybody down with me. All right, I'm the pilot who will tell you to jump out of the plane before I take it on this dive. So let's get messy with a few of these moments and these conversations. Sometimes it feels, and I'm speaking for people, and because I generally don't think I'd struggle with this as much myself, but I do know that there's a little inconsistency or what people perceive as a flipping of a narrative when a celebrity, let's just deal with celebrities. Celebrities will come out, they go, I love my body's great. They build fans based on that body and that body being great. Fans are like, we love your body's great. We're all with you. And then the celebrity pops out, like after 6 months, they've just disappeared, and they come back and they've got a completely new body. And then they're like, hey, I've got a new body.
Yeah.
And then people are like, yo, what just happened here? And they're like, no, I love this body because actually I wasn't healthy and I wasn't happy and my knees were hurting me, whatever it might be. And then they get a level of backlash from the people that were body positive who are now sort of anti-body positive because now their body's gone a different way. Does this make sense? And it almost feels like in the same way everything else in society has become like a cult. It's like, it sometimes feels like we are not working towards a place where people can be the way they wish to be. We're working to a place where people can be the way we wish them to be. And then if they deviate from that, we kick them out. You get what I'm saying? Like, look at how many people were angry at Adele for losing weight.
Yeah.
Angry at her. Jennifer Hudson, angry at her.
For sure.
Do you know what I mean?
I not to speak on behalf of fat people or fat women at all, but I think there's so little imagery of women that had perhaps Adele's old body or Jennifer Hudson's old body. There was something very comforting for people to see a fat woman who's thriving and have this incredible career.
Right.
And there's like this disappointment or resentment when that celebrity then changes their body. I speculate it's some of that.
I mean, I mentioned earlier, like the whole Dove, everyone is beautiful, like the beginning of the sort of corporatized body positivity movement. It seemed dangerous to me immediately because it seemed like, no, like actually beauty is this sort of arbitrary assignation based on people's conformity to market forces. Yeah. It's not like a spiritual moral good. Like it was this whole thing that was really important to say that everyone was beautiful, as if to say everyone is good. And it was like, no, everyone is good and worthy. But perhaps that has nothing to do with beauty.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me like perhaps it is just much more important to say like everyone is worthy and beauty is not as important as we ever thought it was at all. Like it's just this thing, right?
To dumb that down, in a way, it's almost like what you're saying is
it's body neutrality, yeah.
I like that I never thought of that actually.
And it just seemed like, oh, this is a thing that people are going to make a lot of money off of.
For sure.
Now we're still trying to get to beauty.
Okay, hold on. There's this ClickHole article from 2016 that the headline is, "This plus-size model was inspiring, but then she lost 100 pounds, which was also inspiring, even though she was already perfect before, but she's also perfect now." And it was like it's like this very and it's like this is the sort of circular hamster wheel that you get into when it's like everyone's beautiful, but also health is good, but also we love you no matter what you do, but also some choices are socially weighted, and it's just so
here,
convoluted.
I just wanted to throw Tressie in.
Definitely.
Tressie McMillan Cottom, brilliant sociologist. She talks about structural ugliness, right? The thing about like how beauty is like this structural concept, and like even though you can feel beautiful on an individual level, structurally, if you are dark skinned, fat, and embody certain ideas, you're seen as ugly. And I think what Ozempic is getting at is just like, it's this cure to that structural ugliness of weight.
That's interesting.
And that's what a lot of thinkers are trying to resist, that like, why have we made being bigger structurally ugly? So,
so there's two things. Okay. First of all, I think we shouldn't forget, and this is why it's hard to have these conversations in society, I believe, because people weaponize certain parts of conversations and use it as a cudgel against others. Let's take it to like athletes. LeBron James, had to lose a lot of weight, or he decided rather, LeBron James decided to lose a lot of weight. LeBron said, if I want my knees to take the pounding that they're going to take me jumping me, it is easier if I carry less weight. It is easier for me to run across a court if I carry less weight. I think the thing we shouldn't take for granted is like, I almost wish there was a world where we could all go into good faith conversation land.
Yeah.
You know, where we can talk about health, but it not be used against somebody else in like a shitty way.
Yeah.
A doctor can say, hey, you do want to try and work out as much as possible because it's good for your heart. But then someone's not going to point at someone and go like, you see, you piece of trash.
Yeah.
But it is important for people to know, like, the lifting of weights, just like resistance training has been shown to be one of the most important factors in longevity. And I'm not saying living long. I'm saying living as a functional person for as long as possible. So that's like the one side.
Okay, so I agree with you, but I think, Gia, you'll probably understand what I say here. As a woman in those spaces, sometimes it is so hard to disconnect the pursuit of longevity and health for the pursuit of a body that, especially in a city like LA, New York, or London,
I'm with you
that
completely.
People won't disapprove
Trust
of.
me, with men, it's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
But we also, and I'm not saying it's exactly the same because we don't get judged the same, but I know as guys, there's also a difficulty. You're standing in the gym and you're going, I'm here to look healthy, but also, man, I'm so far from...
Marvel body.
Yeah,
body.
I'm so far from that body.
I don't look like Chris Evans in Captain America.
I think back to the LeBron thing, though, it's like, he has very specific needs for physical performance for his body, but that all of us do not. But I think it's an interesting thing to bring up because the question is, how does he need to live in and or change his body to do the things that he wants to do with it, right? Even that as a way that people would talk, even that would be just a really nice way.
It would be amazing, right?
About. Like, it's like for people, like, it's if weight was incidental to that, it was like, can you do the things in your life that you want to do? You know, do you feel good?
I love that. I actually love that.
And it's like, that is probably the foundation that, that could be the start.
That's
of
amazing.
Whatever
we need to get that
right?
somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that could make a meaningful difference. It's like, hey, can you lift your overhead luggage in the plane comfortably? Can you lift your child comfortably? Yeah. Can you move a couch? But it's only the things you do. Can you live your life the way you would like to?
Yeah, and like, do you feel good? Do you feel good in your body, right? I think that's what I was thinking about, the like appetite and pleasure thing, right? Like, if that was valued, right? Like, people just feeling good in the way.
Oh man, I really love that idea.
It seems extremely health conducive, right?
Yes,
like,
sure.
We need to get D'Angelo to come back and do a remix, and this one will be like, how do you feel? That's what it will be. Don't go anywhere, because we got more What Now after this. You know what I also realize as we're speaking about this? Whether we like to admit it or not, humans are generally judgmental. Right? We hold and cast judgments upon other people because it either makes us feel like we are doing well or it makes us, whatever it is, there's reasons we do it, right? I think we shouldn't ever take for granted the fact that fatness is one of the few things that somebody can see on you that tells them something about you in some way, shape, or form. You don't know what it's telling you, but you can see it.
Yeah.
But like, think of it this way. If somebody has a gambling problem or likes gambling or whichever way you want to put it, that person, you can't tell.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody drinks a lot of alcohol, is addicted to alcohol or likes alcohol, drinks it occasionally, you can't tell. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think what's strange about fatness is it is one of the few things where people from far can just assume many things about you because they can like sort of see it from the outside.
And not just make judgments, but express those judgments.
Yes.
But I think with fat people, we're very prescriptive.
We are.
Like, and sometimes it's
and we see that body as like, this is a sign of a problem.
But like, are you sure you want to eat that? Is a thing said to people who are fat or like, I saw a TikTok, a woman was like, being fat and exercising is people on the street going, go you, I'm so proud of you. And she's like, I'm just on a run. like, why do you feel this need to like encourage me? The people are trying to be nice, but like what's under that is like, you're someone that should be pitied and needs my encouragement in a way that's kind of infantilizing you. And I think that's the thing about fat phobia. We just feel like we can say anything to people who are fat. And it's often really cruel.
That's actually a really good point.
Well, there was a thing. There's like Harvard does this implicit bias study, and I think I mentioned it in that piece. That I think it was. I'm going to get the dates wildly wrong, but it was maybe sort of from a point in the mid 2000s to a point in recent years. They analyzed sort of 10 vectors of bias about age, about skin color, about like gender, about, like these various things. Every single implicit and explicit expression of bias went down in that sort of like Obama era period, except for bias against weight. And that went up, I believe, both implicit and explicit.
Wait, so everything went down
I was
except
quite surprised by that. Yeah, everything went down. In everything went down of the 10 things tested in this particular Harvard study. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, that's really fascinating. Yeah. I think, as we said in the beginning of this conversation, this feels like an inflection point and a moment where the conversations we have going forward are going to continuously evolve because now there's been a new agent that's been introduced.
Yeah.
I feel like we're at that point now with these Ozempic type drugs is they're now making us ask questions that go far beyond the questions that we've sort of been comfortable living in for a while. Mm. And those questions are, what is health? Are we trying to promote health, or are we trying to promote our moral superiority upon other human beings?
Yeah.
Are we trying to, run around shaming people because it makes us feel better? Why do we even feel, as you said, Christiana, that we have the right to do these things? And then with children, what does it mean for the future? Because again, the big thing I think we also have to include in this is we don't know what the very long-term effects of these drugs are because they're so new. I mean, if you think about mass adoption for a long period of time, for people who haven't had insulin issues, for people who don't have diabetes, we don't know. And I think that's something people always have to be careful of, is realizing that we don't know. What we do know is how we can treat people today. And so, Gia, what now from your perspective? I'll break it down in two parts. What do you think we're going to see now? And then what would you hope we would see now that maybe we wouldn't and maybe we will?
What I thought originally about the best case sort of cultural effect of this, the fact that this technology exists could be is that we could kind of remove the moral valences from every part of this conversation possible, right? That we could understand that metabolism and the hormonal preset that leads your body to be a certain weight, and that all of it is much more sort of arbitrary and kind of morally neutral, and like you said, Christiana, like a sign of just all of the other things environmentally that you're swimming in. Like, I think that is the best thing that something like Ozempic can do, is lead people to the understanding that if you can radically change people's relationship to fullness by one injection, then maybe it wasn't something that everyone should have been judging people, then very clearly it's not something that deserved decades of moral, a century, like a full century of moral condemnation by like the entire beauty industry, right? Of course, it doesn't seem to have led there at all. And I think, I have no real predictions other than the fact that, one thing about GLP-1 drugs is in the vast majority of cases, as soon as you stop taking them, your body reverts to how it was before. Yeah. So the weight loss lasts as long as you take them, basically.
And you gain more fat.
You gain it back, yeah.
So this is something we've learned about bodies. I think from the starvation experiments back in the day, the only ones we really have on like weight is
right. Dieting slows your metabolism, and that's one of the reasons that fat phobia leads to obesity very directly. Right. And so I think we have yet to see the wave of what happens when people come off of this and reckon with the sort of exit plan, if there is one, or the sort of lifetime use for the sort of like beauty use case, Yeah. And I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know how people will talk about it or how open it'll be. It still doesn't seem like this is something that people talk about frankly when it comes to their own use of it. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if and when and how people ever do.
Yeah, that's a really I think a very honest way to look at all the potential outcomes for what it could or might or should be as we move forward. I will throw in like a random prediction.
Okay.
I think, and this is a crazy thing to say, I think at some point, the American government is going to shut these drugs down because these drugs, if they get to like a point where they are extremely effective, because right now they don't work for some people.
Yeah.
But when they get to the point where like these drugs are just nailing it, and I mean just nailing it, I think they might get shut down.
Interesting.
Because what is America if people are not addicted to social media, people are not addicted to fast food, people are not addicted to junk food? A lot of America has been built on corporations getting people addicted, not giving them something, but getting them addicted to things. And I wonder if, and I know it's like almost conspiracy theory level, but I go like, I wonder if at some point these corporations and these CEOs are going to phone people in Congress and go like, hey, this one drug is shutting down a lot of how American companies make their money. You need to shut it down. And I don't think that that's impossible, to be honest with you.
I agree with you. I have a working theory. I think that like, as there is this kind of like anti-wokeness thing happening and people are swinging to the right, I think the obsession with thinness is also an expression of that. And as long as we're kind of in this kind of right-wingish, populist, conservative era, people are going to long to be thin. Because I think that when people talk about, when people like use woke as a slur, they'll mention people, they'll mention movements, they'll mention DEI, they'll mention body positivity, they'll mention transness, all of these things that for a brief moment, for about 2 to 7 years, were coming into mainstream almost acceptance. They weren't quite acceptance, they were coming into it. And I think that this thin, white, blonde ideal, Barbie movie, guys, it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that like Mattel made an ad and we were like, oh, we should get an Oscar. But it's just like all of that being ascendant and like the Kardashians, as you say, rejecting like the curvy body. As long as that's the case, people are going to want to be thin.
Damn.
And I think
the Kardashians remembering their white.
Yeah, and being white and even dating white men. Something's happening. And then like until it swings and people are like, we don't mind curvy bodies, we don't mind brown skin and full lips and people, the politics feel different. I think the thinness and the Ozempic is here to stay.
Well, as they say at the end of every great epic movie that's about to begin, really, end of part 1. Gia, thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you for joining us, and I hope we see you again.
Thank you, Gia.
Thank you so much.
Brad Smith, welcome to the podcast.
It's great, as always, to be with you, Trevor.
This is really a fascinating and fun experience for me because I didn't plan it, which, like most of my favorite things in life, is how I like things to be. I planned being here with you, at the CEO Summit here in Microsoft in Seattle. That's why I'm wearing a suit. This is not my usual attire. But when I knew I was going to be spending the week here, I thought to myself, man, if there's one person I'd love to have on the podcast, it's somebody I'll often have the most fascinating conversations with, and that's Brad Smith. Not just the vice chair and president of Microsoft, but a thinker. I really appreciate you as a deep thinker. And you and I have been, I've known you for, how many years has it been now?
Since October 2016.
Yeah, look at that, 2016. Wow, what a different time that was. Yeah, but we've known each other for a long time, and you've been gracious enough, to take me around the world of Microsoft. And I've loved it, not even in a commercial way, by the way, just as like a lover of tech. You love tech, I love tech. You love the world, I love the world, and trying to think about it. And I thought I would love to have you on to speak about everything that we're looking at today, AI, geopolitics, elections, misinformation, disinformation, really everything that affects everybody in the world right now, which is unique to have one person who has to deal with all of that. And I think that's what you do in your role at Microsoft. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here.
My gosh. You and I have had so many fascinating opportunities now. You help invent and literally patent new products, among many other things.
It's been a while. I need a new patent. I haven't patented something in a while.
Well, the one thing I can tell you, unfortunately, is you can't get a new patent unless you have a new invention.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. That's exactly the hardest part. So, to situate you, first and all, I was trying to explain this to a friend. I said, I'm going to be having a conversation with Brad Smith. And he's like, Brad Pitt? I said, no, Brad
Yes.
Smith. Brad Smith. It happened so many times. I said, no, Brad Smith from Microsoft. I said, the vice chair and the president of Microsoft. And he said, well, I thought Satya Nadella is the president. No, Satya is the CEO. This man is the president. I love that you have the title president of Microsoft, because I believe in many ways you have the job that many presidents in the world have, and that is you travel around. You're on the road how many days a year?
Oh, probably 120, I would guess.
120. Like that's even to me as a touring comedian, that's impressive.
It's a lot.
120 days a year, you're on the road. You have the role that many world leaders have, and that role is trying to grow the organization or the team that you represent, whilst also trying to add value to other people.
Yeah.
As a leader, how are you stitching together something that could so easily fall apart because it so often does? What do you think it is you understand about communicating and deal making that maybe some world leaders don't understand right now?
I think you really hit the nail on the head, Trevor. The key to permission to invest is to ensure that we're doing it in a way that genuinely benefits somebody else.
Yeah.
And not just superficially or apparently does. And when I just think about, call it this AI moment, I'm just so struck by two things. One is what never happened for electricity. Electricity is like AI. You can't have electricity without a massive investment in power plants and a grid.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's a really sobering thing that here we are. It's literally 142 years after the first power plant lit up the first building in Manhattan. And this morning, there are still 700 million people in the world that don't have electricity.
Right.
43% of the people who live in Africa. And I often look at that and go, how can this be? What happened? And the answer is it was enormously expensive. Capital didn't flow around the world. Ironically, when some of the colonial powers became colonial powers, they built railway lines to extract mineral wealth from these places, but never built the power plants that would genuinely create the basis for prosperity for everybody. So to have a company, or really a group of companies, that is prepared to spend the money to do what no one ever did, that's a fantastic thing. Now, the flip side, people don't necessarily want to rely on a foreigner. Last year, literally in France, I had a meeting. We were talking with the government minister, and he said, I am worried that I'll be too dependent on you. And I said, well, just remember, we're going to build these massive buildings. We're not building them on wheels. So once they're built, they're in France, and they will be subject to French law and French regulation.
Uh-huh.
We have to win your trust. And we have to show that we are going to follow French law, and it's a new equation.
In a world where so many people think business and geopolitics and politics in general is a zero-sum game, you seem to be an outlier in that field. You seem to be forging relationships. You seem to be building bridges. You seem to be creating diplomatic ties where they may not necessarily exist. It feels like Europe is on the edge. It feels like many parts of Africa are on the edge. You see how many coups or, civil wars we're facing. The Middle East is on the edge. You're in a position where you are oftentimes speaking to world leaders who themselves do not necessarily have a good relationship with the country that you've just come from, and you have to make a deal with them, and you have to agree with them, and you have to find consensus. What do you think some of our leaders might be missing right now in the way they conduct their politics? Like, we don't seem to be very good at sitting down at tables anymore. It seems like we're very quick to get to the conflicts, and maybe I have confirmation bias in my own memory, but I remember as a child watching the news, there were always these conferences and there were always these summits and there were always these peace talks and negotiations and people always at tables. What is it that seems to be lost in the world of diplomacy?
There are some real serious differences in the world, and I'll never go as far as to say everybody is equally good. They just have misunderstandings. And at the same time, I think that if people don't sit down and spend more time talking, they may miss the opportunities to find common ground. One of the interesting things that I have found in the last year is if there is a unifying idea. It's around artificial intelligence. No country or people or set of leaders anywhere that I have found wants to see humans subjugated by machines. No military leader I've met wants to see a machine start a war. And the thing that I think that should remind us of is on a daily basis, it's so easy to focus on what makes you different from someone else. And if you look at like the history of the United States, enormous discord, disagreement in, say, 1940, 1941, and then all of a sudden the country came together when it was attacked at Pearl Harbor and it had a common foe. I don't think we should think about AI as a common foe. But the fact that it's different is creating an opportunity for us to remember, you know what? We are all human beings. We all have these things in common. Maybe we should spend a little bit more time remembering that, whether we live in a single community or a country, hey, let's remember, it's a pretty small planet, when you get down to it. But you do need to bring people together, and you need to show them something that's different from themselves, sometimes for them to see that.
It's funny, though, when you say the thing about AI, I also think it's interesting how human beings are a lot more clear-eyed on what they perceive good or bad to be when it comes from an external actor. So if you say to people, should we start wars? They go, well, the thing with war and the thing. But if you say, should a machine be allowed to start a war? People go, no.
Yeah.
Immediately. It's amazing how clear-eyed people will be when you take it away from the human, and you say, okay, can a robot decide who gets money and who doesn't? Then you're like, no, that's crazy. Then you're like, but then why should a person decide that? Well, they're like, well, that's different. And I don't know. I find it interesting because AI, for me personally, is illuminating the human experience. On the podcast, for instance, we spoke to Sam Altman, and this was right after he got fired and then rehired, and it was the whole debacle at OpenAI that affected Microsoft and everyone really. But Sam speaks about AI from a pioneer's perspective. Sam thinks about the long-term future, this idea of what it can be, what it can do, and the utopia. And I think, it's necessary for somebody like that who's building it. In your book, Tools and Weapons, that you co-authored with Carol Ann Brown, you talk about the fact that it's not black and white. And I really appreciate that point of view, because many people will say AI good, AI bad. But what you argue is, like dynamite that was used to clear paths for cars and roads to be built, and then also used to blow up, people's homes or to wage wars. All technology is a weapon and a tool. Why is it important for us to think about AI as a weapon and a tool, or any tech really?
Well, I think it is because any tech, one of the examples we use in our book is a simple one. Like, you can use a broom to sweep the floor. You can use a broom to hit somebody over the head.
My mom did both.
Yeah. And so sobering when you see that humans are just as ingenious and creative in using technology to do bad things as good things.
Yeah.
And this does go, I think, to the role that I believe the tech sector is playing better than it did 5 years ago and needs to continue to get better, substantially better, I would say, 5 years from now. Hey, we need to worry about both of this. Let's be excited about all the good things. And I am fundamentally an optimist about all the good things that can be done. But, oh my gosh, if you don't anticipate, if you don't build in guardrails, if you don't use technology to defend against the abuses of technology, its weaponization, that is what happened with social media, to be honest, in my view. It's not that Facebook did not weaponize social media, but the Russians did.
Right. Okay.
And because people on the West Coast of the United States were so idealistic that they didn't perceive that happening, we were not prepared as an industry. What I find fascinating is I think the healthiest and most successful societies are fundamentally a three-legged stool. There is the government or the public sector, there is business or the private sector, and there is the nonprofit or NGO or civil society. There's three legs. And this is where governments, they absolutely should be pushing and regulating. That's their job. It's where NGOs need to be keeping us all honest by criticizing us and then offering suggestions. But the more powerful the technology, the more formidable the weapon.
Yeah.
And we got to think about both. People in business say government's too powerful. People in government or the nonprofit community say, no, business is too powerful. And unfortunately, I think that the most politically astute social scientists in the world sometimes work for the Russian government, and they spend an enormous amount of energy trying to sow the dissensions between us.
Let's talk a little bit about the Russia thing. Right before the war in Ukraine started, I remember Microsoft was one of the first to issue a warning to the world to say, hey, we think Russia's about to invade Ukraine. And you based this on a wide range of informations. Help me understand this. You know, you are seeing how Russia is trying to either sow dissent in the world or create and disseminate misinformation in the world. And from a US perspective, it seems pretty clear. It's like, this is what Russia's doing. But then in many parts of Africa and in parts of South America, there's a very different opinion on Russia. They go, well, Russia is trying to help us grow crops, or Russia's trying to help us with our power plant technology, or Russia's trying to help us with our science, and the rest of the Western world isn't helping with that. Is that split real, or are we just perceiving the same thing differently?
I think most of Europe is united because they've seen, Russian tanks and Russian missiles and Russian troops invade the sovereign territory, the soil of Ukraine. I think what the Russians have also done is they do run what we call a cyber influence operation, a disinformation effort on a global scale. The key to misleading the public is to tell a story that just might be true. If it's too fanciful, it will be rejected because people will listen to it and go, no, that's crazy. You need to understand the people that you're trying to impact, and you then need to be creative. You need to weave a tale, if you will, that is just plausible enough. And then you use technology to get it going, sometimes now with deep fakes, but more often not. And then you use social media to fan the flames. One of the more sobering things, if you will, that I remember someone sharing in recent months was somebody who had talked with Navalny when he was in Germany for a time. And he said, you have to remember, they're not trying to persuade people that Vladimir Putin is trustworthy. They're trying to persuade people that no one is trustworthy.
There's one thing I want to go back to, I guess, in the social media space. TikTok is on everybody's lips right now. I speak to a lot of young people who say, why is TikTok being banned? And I know there's a large community of young people who say, like, TikTok seems so positive. It seems like a space where there's varying opinions. There's niche as well, which is novel for a social media platform at that scale. And then there are people who work in government who say, no, this technology is the enemy of the United States. The Chinese government needs to divest from it in any way whatsoever. You've been in a unique position in that, like, I remember it was reported that, Microsoft was one of the companies that was sort of asked to look at buying TikTok when it was in the Trump administration. So how do you look at this situation? Because it seems a lot more complicated than we would like on the face of it, And then also, is there a world where this thing can continue to exist in a more positive way? Or is it even existing in a negative way? Or is that just how it's been spun?
Well, first of all, I think it would be a shame if TikTok were to go away. Anything that 1 or 200 million Americans decide to use, you want to respect their basic ability to keep doing something that they've chosen to do. I think it would be a shame if it were to go away because there would be less competition in the marketplace. What I would say is, in a way that sort of makes it a little simpler, to be honest, the fundamental issue today is that the Chinese government is not comfortable with American technology services for the Chinese consuming public. That's why you don't see Facebook. In China, you don't see Instagram, you don't see X or Twitter. You barely even see LinkedIn. The U.S. government has now taken the same position. It is not comfortable with Chinese technology providing a consumer service to such a large part of the population. The thing that is different is whereas the Chinese, in my opinion, as at the governmental level, basically took action as soon as they saw American services start to grow.
Yeah.
The U.S. government was slower, and so TikTok became extremely popular. And even the law that Congress passed, that the president signed, banning it could happen, but really what they're trying to do is require the sale of it. Now, then you get to the second question, which is, should governments care about these things? What I've found, and I've always found most striking about TikTok, is that the debate started around privacy, and I think it is relatively feasible to protect the privacy of people's data, even when the service is controlled by a foreign company. But the risk of use for, call it, disinformation, cyber influence operations, and that's where I think that the U.S. government has now decided that it's just not comfortable. Having a tool that can reach so many people so quickly and just use an algorithm to determine what people see next, become a potential engine of disinformation. So what is the answer? We'll let the courts figure out whether everything was done properly, et cetera. But I think ultimately if TikTok needs to be sold, you'd want it to be sold to probably companies and brands that the public trusts. That would enable the service to continue in all the ways that people currently value it. And it could address the concern that emerged in the United States at the governmental level at the same time.
We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break. You're in a unique position, as this giant company that is tasked with observing technology, observing information, looking at what's happening in a space that sort of doesn't exist and yet is ubiquitous. You are also based everywhere and nowhere. And one of the complexities that has now arisen with many companies, specifically American companies, is where does the loyalty of the company lie? Because I think it applies to Microsoft.
Yeah.
But I think, honestly, it's something that every company and maybe even many countries are going to need to start thinking about. And that is, how do we find the balance between what we think is right and wrong and what somebody else thinks is right or wrong when we are in their domain?
I think we need to be a principled company. It really, in my view, especially on these issues of sort of war and peace, and that's fundamentally what we're talking about with these cyber attacks and the like. Yeah, there are a couple of principles. I mean, one is we work to protect countries defensively. We don't engage in offensive operations. There are other companies that do that. Yeah. I respect that, but that's not us. I don't think it works to do what we do and be engaged in offensive activities. Second, maybe most importantly, we believe in the protection of civilians. I mean, I think that's a global principle. It's a universal principle. It was one of the most important ideas to emerge from World War II. The whole world came together in 1949 in Geneva, Switzerland. It was called the fourth version of the Geneva Convention. Yeah. And I feel very comfortable saying that we stand up to protect civilians, whether they're French or American or South African or Kenyan or in other places, and I think that principle and other similar principles are ways that we can sort of synthesize or unify the role we play everywhere.
When you talk about protecting people, America's getting ready for another election. In fact, this year the world is getting ready for more elections than it has in a very long time, and some of the biggest elections, from India to South Africa to the United States, et cetera, et cetera. The world is we're in a moment of tectonic shifts, and we don't know which way the plates will move and how those plates will affect everybody on the globe. But there's a consensus. People agree that social media is a tool that is powerful enough to shift or shape how people think, almost against their will or without them willingly knowing that their view is being shifted. When you talk to social media companies about this, they'll say, it's not a big impact. We don't have that much of an impact. And it's also not that bad. The Russians aren't really doing much and there isn't much immersive. But when you talk to Microsoft, you say, no, it is. Why do you think there's such a difference in how you're seeing the problem between, let's say, yourself and social media companies, tech companies?
Yeah, everybody, I'll just say most people, get up in the morning and they go to work and they feel good about what they're doing. So when there's a suggestion that what they're doing is not so good, it's hard to get your mind around it. I think that's an easy problem for any of us. I think that the concerns around social media have grown over time. In a way, it's almost startling because there was a time when people thought it was going to be the savior of democracy. It was going to bring information to everyone. Everyone would be a publisher. It would be the great equalizer.
Yeah,
we were almost euphoric. And it's worth remembering that as we think about AI. You can start out being so euphoric that you miss the dangers that technology may be creating. As time has gone by, especially the last 2 years, there's been this interesting and maybe even odd development because I see a lot of people, I meet a lot of people in government, and they say, we are not going to make the same mistake we made with social media. We are going to regulate AI. And I'm like, I get that. But if we made mistakes with social media, are we going to go fix them or are we just going to go to the next thing? Because I think these issues are still very much with us. I do think that the real solution to a lot of the concerns that people have about, say, social media require bringing tech companies and governments and nonprofits together in multi-stakeholder action. We need to be willing to work with each other. And some of the debates have been bruising in recent years. It seems to be a little bit harder to get people into the same room, and I think that's something we have to keep working to overcome.
Getting people in the same room seems to be an art form and an idea that is forgotten or maybe ignored. And ironically, we want to get people in the same room in a world where technology is keeping people in their own rooms. How do you look at that on a philosophical level?
Well, I think that is a really fascinating and important aspect of all of this. There's two ways one can look at social media and have some concern. One is that it fans the flames of discord or unhealthy comparisons based on what people see. Mm-hmm. But the second is it just leads to more time spent doing things other than interacting with other people, including in the same room. And I think both of these things have come together in a way that makes some of our challenges societally more pronounced. But the other thing that's interesting, this has been the story of technology for 100 years. The automobile connected people that were far apart. You could drive 15 miles and be with people that, frankly, before the automobile, you couldn't really go see.
Right.
But the moment people could leave a small town, the ties within the town started to weaken. Mm-hmm. People didn't spend as much time with each other. And with each successive generation of technology, the telephone did the same thing. When I was a kid in the middle of the United States, in the 1970s, my parents would complain that my sister or brother and I were spending too much time in the evening talking with friends. We had to argue over we only one phone line. It was fixed, but that was time that separated the family. Now, to me, the iconic image of, call it, life in most of the world the last 10 years is 3 family members sitting on a couch, each person absorbed with their own screen and their own phone. So we have to pull each other away from the technology to get each other in the room and counter the force of technology. But then there's a second aspect. social media has made it so easy to find people you agree with that I think it makes it a little bit harder to get people comfortable spending time with others they disagree with.
Yeah.
And yet, if you can't sit down with people that you disagree with, I think fundamentally your worldview gets smaller, not larger. You don't build the bridges that are needed to go solve big problems and act with great ambition. So, for all my love of technology, having spent 31 years at Microsoft, I equally feel the limits of it. And it's why I've always been so committed to just getting people to listen to each other and talk with each other. And it's okay that people may say something that's critical of you. Just have a little thick skin. You're going to learn something.
Don't go anywhere, because we got more What Now after this. So let's talk about AI. It's interesting to me how every space I go into, everyone is looking at this giant orb from a different side, but the orb is there. It is floating ominously above the earth, and it is AI. So let's start with the weapon side of AI. Let's start with the scary side, the side that keeps you up at night. What are some of the biggest things you think we need to be looking out for as we embark on what could be, by various accounts, the biggest jump in human technology in, hundreds of years, if not ever?
I think the two problems that I worry about the most in sort of real world, this decade kind of sense are number one, people who are doing horrible things today will use AI to do them even more horribly in the future. And then the second is just it could, if not deployed well, end up exacerbate social divides that already exist. You think about a bully in a middle school, a 12-year-old. You think about people trying to defraud senior citizens of their money. Yeah. You think about people trying to impact elections and undermine democracy from within. They will and even are using AI to do all of those things. Unfortunately, what you have to be willing and able to do is, if you want to fight criminal activity, you got to think like a criminal so that you can anticipate it. And then you put in place the technology both to make it harder to use legitimate tools, but fundamentally to detect it, respond, and as much as possible, defeat it. And, even though the conversation in 2024 is about deepfakes and elections, it's only a matter of time before you read a story somewhere that there's a 75-year-old grandparent who wired money because they got a call and it sounded like their granddaughter.
Oh, yeah. We're already seeing some of those. I think there was one I read in Miami. There was one. Yeah, you're already seeing those stories.
Yeah, and that's just so unfortunate. But that's this dark side of human nature. So we need to combat all of those kinds of things.
But is there a way to combat it? For someone listening, they go, if it is a deep fake, if it's a video that looks like somebody, or it's a voice that sounds like somebody, how do you combat that? Isn't the genie out of the bottle?
I will always argue that there is a way to combat it, not with 100% success, not as a panacea. That's just not the way the world works. But if you are prepared to invest in protecting people and defending communities and countries from these kinds of abuses, you can get a lot done. And so already you have to broaden the strategy, which is why we use AI to detect AI. And and that's key. And you do a lot of public education. If you get an email from someone that you don't know telling you that if you send them your bank account details, they'll wire you $1 million, most people are like, yeah, I've heard of this before. I am not doing that. And then fundamentally just continue to remember, just because it's on the internet, it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
But then the other side of things is the divides that it can widen. And the biggest divide it can widen is just the division between technology haves and have-nots. We still live in a world where there are roughly 3 billion people that don't have access to the internet. People even say in a single country like the United States, where if you're underprivileged in the middle of a city or underprivileged in a rural community, you may not have access to the internet. You may not have access to a computer. If you don't have access to an internet or a computer, it's going to be hard to use AI. But it's like everything. If you worry about a problem, you're actually likely to do at least something useful to solve it.
Right.
It's when you don't think about the problem that by definition, you'll do nothing to help address it.
When you look at the upside, it seems like, and maybe it's because I'm an optimist, it seems like the potential is scarily infinite, in healthcare, in education, in equitable access to information. And it seems like AI is deflationary, and it seems like a tool that can be diffused in a way that few technologies ever have been. Is this how you see it as well? And what have you seen that makes you most excited when you look at AI?
Well, you take something like healthcare, and then you have to keep in mind that there's so many people today that don't have access to a doctor.
Yeah.
This is just so important in bringing, many healthcare-related advances. It will, accelerate drug discovery. So I think that is just one of the kinds of examples where we should all be so enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I think there's a second thing which is so interesting. The barrier to entry for people in doing hard things is actually quite high, and it's true for almost everybody in at least some space. I mean, I may be good at reading or writing, but not at math, or I can't code. Well, with AI, you can ask for help. You can actually get to a point in the very near future where if you can conceive of it, you can ask for help to actually go do it without having to know how to do it all yourself. And I think that's going to be a huge game changer in just making it possible for people to do more things. And, at the end of the day, and you, even more than me, have had the opportunity to meet so many interesting, successful people in so many walks of life, in so many parts of the world. And I sometimes think to myself, what is the trait that you see most often in people who have become hugely successful? And I think it's curiosity.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think AI is the best thing invented for curious people, and hopefully it will help other people become more curious.
When you look at it philosophically, beyond an actual tool, AI has the opportunity to fundamentally shift, like any industrial revolution, what and how humans perceive their value, their purpose, and what they consider work. And it's interesting, when you're talking about doctors and medicine, etc., it stands to reason that AI can get to the point where it will be doing all the thinking parts of medicine, but we'll still need people to be doing the physical parts until robotics maybe gets to the point where it can also do that with more accuracy and no fatigue, etc. So then the question becomes, on a philosophical level, as somebody who thinks quite a lot, where does that leave us?
Well, yeah, I've for 2 decades been the person who is in the senior ranks at Microsoft, who sits every week with engineers, but didn't get a degree in engineering or computer science myself. I came from, the liberal arts side. And so philosophically, I have always wanted to be a part of something that advances technology and uses it to make people better, to make humanity more successful. Our whole mission as a company, it's not about technology for its own sake. It's create technology that empowers other people or organizations so they can do something that they couldn't do before.
Mm-hmm.
That's the philosophy. I don't want to create a future where people cannot dream new ideas that a machine's already thought of. I mean, and I'm not fundamentally worried about it, because I just think that people who think that a machine can do everything that a person can, I think they're underestimating people and that spark of creativity. that people can have. So that's sort of philosophically where I will probably always be. That's the company I want to be part of. That's creating technology that makes people better. Doesn't replace people. Doesn't leave people with nothing to do except go to the beach. Because I appreciate that it's nice to go to the beach, but when you're on day 700 of going to the beach, I just can't believe it's as much fun as on day 3.
I think that's true for everything. I think that's true for everything. Well, Brad, I could speak to you for hours. Oftentimes I do. But I know whenever I'm taking your time, there's a president somewhere in the world who's wondering.
No, I doubt that. But
where you are. No, this is true. This is true. So to whichever president I've just kept you from, I apologize. But thank you for spending the time with us. I appreciate the way you think. I highly recommend people read the book because I do think it's an even-handed, optimistic, but still cautious look at how we see the world and technology. So thank you so much again, my friend.